Hi everybody, this is the lab screening slash pre-test slash repeated baseline visit training. Alright, um, so in every single room there's a rack of paperwork and stuff, and all the paperwork that you see in this video will be there. Um, so to begin, the lab screening visit is the first visit uh, that the patient would participate in. Uh, so let's start there. So every room there's gonna be a flow chart, something similar to this. You could use this as a guideline, not a guideline, but a checklist of what needs to be done for the visit. You can also, close to the beginning of the visit, let kind of run through it really quick with the patient. Now, this is the instruction sheet. There's an instruction for every type of visit. If for any reason you go into a visit not knowing anything, you could literally go through each number step by step and still be able to go through the visit successfully, although you might sound like a robot. Now, okay, let's begin. The lab screening visit. The first thing you want to do is bring the patient into one of the rooms, sit them down, and you want to ask for their ID. Any type of ID with the picture on it would be fine. Obviously, a driver license would be preferred. And there are two reasons for that. First, we want to make sure that we got the spelling of their name correctly, and also we want to make sure that they are who they say they are, and above a certain age. So on the instruction sheet, just fill in their date of birth. All right. Number two. Make sure that the patient doesn't have any other children that's with them. If there is, make sure there's another RA that's able to babysit them outside in the waiting room. The reason for that is it can speed up the visit a lot faster. With a child in the room, that can really extend the visit. And then you move on to the auto recording. Let the patient know that we auto record all our visits. We do review them, but for them it's for quality assurance purposes. All right. And usually they will say yes. No one ever said no as of right now in the past 2 years. But if for whatever reason they say no, make sure to talk to Dr. Wen about it before proceeding. Okay? So after they say yeah, give us permission to record, you have to start the auto recorder, which is something like this, in every single room. The power button is on the side, right here, and just kind of flip it and hold it down, and it will turn on, and it will load. And once it's finished loaded, press this record button, and then you begin the recording by saying this phrase on the bottom in the auto recording box. All right. After you say this phrase, patient point to make sure the patient read that. That's on the table. All right. And after that, you can proceed. For this visit, we we continue by previewing the patient, the consent form, which is something like this. So it's good to let the patient know why we're doing the research and what to expect from it before we actually start. So go ahead, preview the consent form. Make sure that you read every single part of this consent form, so when the patient has a question, you're able to answer it. When I say preview this to the patient, you don't have to go through read through it word for word for all, not through the whole packet, but make sure to touch on a few important points. One is why we're doing this research. Second, you gotta make sure that to tell them that this study is voluntary, so they could leave at any time. It could, if they don't want to participate, that is also fine. Make sure to introduce them what the intervention is, how long, what to expect from the intervention quickly, the responsibilities, the risk in the study, which is close to none, and HIPAA, the patient confidentiality agreement. Okay, so go through it briefly with them, and the important part here is make sure that you don't sign it in this. You don't sign it. You guys don't sign it at this visit. Tell the patient to take it home, read it thoroughly, and come back, and we'll sign it together in the next visit. So they can't sign it at home either. They have to bring it back unsigned, and then they sign in our lab. Now, there should be 2 copies for this, okay? There's one for us and one for the patient. Okay. After we preview the consent form, I will go ahead and ask the patient for their urine. Remember, our 2 tests in this lab is the urine test and the breath CO test. Those are the 2 most important part of each visit. Since this is their first visit, explain to them what we test for in the urine, which is cotinine, and explain what cotinine is, which is a metabolite of nicotine. Alright. Second is the carbon monoxide. Explain to them what carbon monoxide is, and what it does to the body quickly, and the baby. Okay. After explaining it to them, ask them for the urine. Usually they will say yes. If they say no, again, tell doctor when before you proceed, because if those are the 2 most important data results for us. Okay. After you do the 2 tests, you can move on to the survey. All right. The survey is going to be the personal contact info survey and the state eligibility survey. All right. Have those 2 survey pulled up on the patient computers. All right. The link to each of the surveys are on all the tables, computer tables. All right. And you just gotta make sure you put the right link in. It's gonna be something like that. Okay. And then you wait. Make sure the patient has time to complete this. This survey the 2 surveys together. It takes about 45 minutes or so. And wait. So important point here is for the research assistant that's working on the visit, make sure you bring something to read or have something to do while you're waiting, because you're going to be waiting for at least 45 minutes. Okay? Alright. once the patient is done with the surveys, let Dr. Wen know. He will review the survey. While he reviews the survey, he will proceed to the next thing, which would be the calendar. Alright? First, so for this calendar, there's two purposes to this calendar. The first purpose is this will be the calendar where you record their appointments. So what you would do is circle the date, write the time, and what kind of visit it is, okay? For the second purpose is we want them to record the number of cigarettes that they're smoking each day. Now, for example, today is the 18th, alright, May 18th. We want to start by asking them if they could remember 2 weeks prior of their smoking for each day. Status for each day. Try to make it 2 weeks, but a minimum of 1 week, alright, before the first visit. Now, some patient might say, well, I don't really exactly remember how many cigarettes I smoke. That is fine. Tell them to have their best guess. The reason for that is we want to know more of their trend than their actual specific amount. So, for example, a patient that smokes 1 cigarette is not going to say they smoke 5 or 10. Vice versa. A patient that smokes 10, they're not going to, a cigarette a day, they're not going to say that they smoke one or 2. Okay? Usually their numbers are they're within the range of how much they usually smoke. Okay? Alright. So this is the calendar. And you're going to be updating this every single visit. Also, there's 2 copies. The patient get one, and we keep one too. So every time you update, you guys would kind of sync the calendar together. Make sure that they're all the same. As you continue, after updating the calendar, hopefully Dr. Wen is done reviewing. If he's not, you could go on and give the compensation for the day. Alright, the compensation for lab screening is $30. And the compensation should be within the folder that you get from Dr. Wen at the beginning of the visit. It should be in an envelope that's labeled $30. Okay. Now, make sure you check the amount before you hand it to the patient. All right, in case of any mistake, wrong amounts. Because if it's too little, you will know ahead of time. If it's too much, the patient might just end up keeping it and not tell you. Okay, so make sure that's the right amount. Make sure you tell the patient to check it herself afterwards. And after that, you're gonna tell them to sign, fill up. You're gonna be filling out this receipt and sign. Tell the patient to sign it right here, and you sign it right there. Okay, this is the receipt. Once you're done with that, Dr. Wen will come in. He will review some of the questions with the patient, and if the patient is eligible for the study, you will go ahead and schedule the next visit on the calendar. So, for scheduling the next visit is going to be pre-test, alright? Make sure you tell the patient that the pre-test takes a long time. It's going to take a minimum of an hour and a half, okay? So make sure they have time. They have time for the pre-test visit. Now, when you schedule you gotta have a minimum of 1 day in between the next visit. a minimum of 1 day. Okay, so for instance, if today was the 22nd of May, the next earliest visit will be Wednesday. All right. So we always want a gap in between visits. A minimum of 1 day. It could be a little longer if the patient can't come for some reason. That's fine. But we also don't want it to be like 3 weeks later also. Okay? And then once you're done with the scheduling, you give them the compensation. That's the end of the visit. And you end the visit with the end the audio recording at the end of visit. And before you press stop, make sure you read this line too. Okay? And that's it for the lab screening visit. Now, as you can see, if you follow through the video with a flow chart, I didn't go through everything in order, and it doesn't have to be in order. Just make sure you get everything done on this checklist. Okay. All right. So that's the end of lab screening. Now, let's move on to pre-test. Pre-test is actually very simple. Pre-test. The major thing you want to get done for pre-test is the pre-test survey. So from pre-test and visit on, the first 3 things you're gonna do is gonna be the same for every single visit. Okay, after pre-test, first thing you do is bring the patient in and start the audio recording. Okay. Once you start the audio recording, you ask the patient for the urine, so you could get the urine test started, because the urine test takes at least 20 minutes. And then you're going to do the carbon monoxide to get both tests done at the beginning. Once you're done with that, you move on to whatever you need to do for your visit. So in this case, the visit, for this pre-test visit, you're going to begin. After the test, you're going to start. After the audio recording and the test, you're going to start with the consent form. So, the patient should have read it thoroughly at home and ask them if there's any questions. If there's no questions, you guys will go ahead and sign the back together. Alright? Like I said, there's going to be 2 copies. One for you and one for her. Alright? Fill out their name, let them sign it, print their name, you sign it, and then print your name. And remember to date it. Alright? They keep a copy, we get one ourselves. Alright? Move on. After the consent form, you could move on to update the calendar to whatever the amount of cigarettes that you smoke since the last visit. And then you could actually just tell them to jump on the computer. Like for the previous visit, you should have the pre-test survey pulled open before the patient arrives. Now, this is going to take a long time. This pre-test is about 450 questions roughly. Alright, so you want them to, it's recommended that they finish everything in one visit. And so I usually don't present that option to break it down in half at the beginning. I would just let them flow through it as much as they can. So a little trick that I do for the pre-test is at the end at the bottom of each page for the pre-test, there's a status bar. And I'll ask every time I see the patient done a quarter of the survey, I will kind of tell them to take a break, and we'll do something else. Like get the weight and height, because we need the weight and height for this visit. Or maybe do the breast CO and not do it at the beginning. So there's gonna be a break. The final 50% goes a lot faster. The final 50% of the survey goes a lot faster, so usually they're okay with that. Now, you got for this visit, you gotta make sure that the patient is not getting aggravated or frustrated. All right, most of them will after a certain point. That's when you would present the option perhaps finishing the survey next visit. So, for instance, a common cue that the patient is not happy with the survey is if they complain a lot, or if they fidget a lot, if they're looking at the phone a lot, if they're looking at the time a lot, the clock. That's when you know they're kind of done with taking the survey for the day. That's when you would present the option of finishing next time, but remind them that pushing the survey to next visit will cause their next visit to be longer than what it's supposed to be. Okay, and the next visit is a repeated baseline visit, and usually that visit takes a really short time. But you could let them decide if they want to just troop it out and finish the survey this visit or next. Okay. So let's say they finished the survey. They're pretty much done for the visit. Okay. Make sure that you got the weight and the height if you haven't done so. Make sure you get the weight and height, and then you could give them the compensation. Compensation for this visit is $30. Like the previous visit, check the amounts, both you and the patient, and then fill out the receipt, and they're off. They can leave. So that's the pre-test. Finally, the repeated baseline visit. Repeated baseline visit is really quick. There's not much to it. Like all the other visits, you start the recording. You do all the recording. You ask them for the urine, and to do the urine test and do the breath CO test. If they haven't finished their pre-test from previous visit, you will have that pulled up before the visit. If they did finish the pre-test visit, the pre-test survey, you could just move on and give them the compensation. The compensation for repeated baseline visits is a little different, alright? Repeated baseline visits is going to be only $15. Okay? Plus the bonus $2 if they came on time. But other than that, they're pretty that's the repeated baseline visit. Okay, the repeated baseline visit is really short. Usually, it takes about roughly 20 to 30 minutes. The patient they don't have to stay for the full 20 minutes until the urine test is done, because they should be still at a 6. Oh, before they leave, make sure that you update the calendar. All right. And schedule, if not, schedule next visits. Alright, these repeated, I forgot to mention in the pretest, before they leave, schedule the repeated baseline visit if it's not scheduled yet. Okay? And the repeated baseline visit is gonna continue for at least 3 visits. So make sure you have that down. Other than that, that's pretty much it. That's the end of all the training of the lab screening visit, the pre-test visit, and the repeated baseline visit. Alright, thank you.